Hey, Professor Caps. Hope your Saturday afternoon is going well. I'm here to perform the yeast and hydrogen peroxide and um, pasta experiment. So I've got a couple things I want to show you first. I've got a standard mason jar. It's a little smaller one. I haven't put anything in there yet. I've also went ahead and made a hole in the top to it. Show it to you on both sides. Now I went a little bit bigger for the circumference of this hole because I am using a rigatoni pasta. I know the recommendation was to use a ziti. I'm going to try this just to make sure it works. So it has a little bit larger of a diameter than your standard ziti does. Therefore, I've made my hole a little bit bigger. Now, in the video, or the video that you used to introduce us to this experiment, the gentleman used what looked like 1 teaspoon of yeast. I think I might up that to a teaspoon and a half, just to compensate for the larger hole. I just want to make sure that enough oxygen is being produced, that I can keep the flame going. So, all right, so I've got hydrogen peroxide here. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up. So it looks like we're about a quarter full. And then got my active dry yeast. Okay. So 1 teaspoon in. Do about a half teaspoon as well, just to make sure. Okay. You can smell that well. All right, so the initial reaction, you can see those oxygen bubbles forming. But I'm gonna go ahead and shake it up a little. Whoa. Whoa. All right, I am gonna. Whoa. Whew. Holy moly. All right, looks like we had a little overflow. Wow. So maybe the 1.5 teaspoon of yeast was not a good idea. Let me push this over. Okay. I'm gonna get a napkin real quick. I'll be right back. So maybe my shake was too aggressive. I'm not sure. I'm going to try and proceed with this experiment, but I will repeat it if necessary. All right, looks like I can't get that to light. I'm going to pause and go ahead and restart the whole experiment. So I'm back and I'm going to try this experiment again. While I was out there, I decided to use a bigger mason jar. Maybe I should have went with this size originally. So I'm going to try and I'm going to fill it up maybe, let's see, it looks like I got a half cup in there, which is about, 1/8 of the total volume here. Now I'm still using my rigatoni and then the same lid that I had used the other time. So, all right. So I think going in for more than 1 teaspoon of yeast was a mistake because I had a massive reaction. And it was interesting because the the substance or the product that was produced was really warm. So that would lead me to believe that this is an exothermic reaction. All right, so again, I'm got my concoction in here, about a fourth of a or 3/4 of a tablespoon. I'm gonna mix it a little bit. Okay, that looks much better. All right. All right. I'll let you watch this with me. Looks like it's working better this time. Oh, that's really cool. So I don't know if you can see this, but we've got significant bubbling, and then there's like a foamy substance that's being formed, um, and then it looks like my flame is running down the it's black on the inside of the rigatoni, about halfway down. Looks like it hasn't caught completely, and now it's kind of rolling. Woo! Look at that go. Having this sort of flame indoors kind of makes me a little bit nervous, but woo! All right, so second run much better, clearly. Look at how big that flame is. So it looks like I'm hoping that whenever this complex carbohydrate, the pasta, is completely burned, we're not going to have any more fuel source. Woo! I got a flame projecting out this way now. No, I think that this is probably the coolest experiment that we've done so far in class. It's amazing how crisp that the rigatoni is. I didn't think it would be. Oh, and looks like we are out of rigatoni. So cool. All right, I'm gonna move this to the side and kind of describe what happened. I know I apologize that we had to do 2 runs. This is the first time in class that I've actually, have not been able to successfully complete the experiment on the first run, which is good. I think we learned a little something in the process. I initially tried to put in, excess yeast. Turns out that yeast was, too excessive of a quantity. To get the reaction contained in the small volume jar that I had. So I think switching to a larger mason jar was definitely the right approach here. And I don't think that there was any issue using the rigatoni. Initially, it didn't light on the first run. The second run, I had no problem whatsoever. And I think the experiment ran exactly how we anticipated it should have run. So in this experiment, we have created a pasta rocket engine that relies on a hybrid reaction. So the hybrid reaction is going to consist of using a solid combustible source and a gas oxidizer like oxygen. So in our experiment, the pasta, which is a complex carbohydrate, is the fuel source, and oxygen produced from the reaction between the hydrogen peroxide and the catalyst in yeast allowed for the oxygen to be produced. So that's being the oxidizer. So as I said, the oxygen comes from the hydrogen peroxide. When baking yeast and peroxide are mixed, the oxygen is liberated, and the yeast has an enzyme called catalase that catalyzes the production of O2, which is also known as oxygen. The production of O2 from hydrogen peroxide is exothermic and thus becomes quite warm. Now, we noticed this on my first run when I actually had to touch some of the product, and I could tell it was significantly warmer than room temperature. So the reaction in this process is 2H2O2 as the reactants, forming the products of two water molecules, H2O, plus O2, which is in the form of gas. So the reason I didn't include yeast as a part of this equation, because it simply provides the catalyst, which is the catalase for this reaction. All right, thank you.